Do you guys remember how Deshaun Watson got the largest fully guaranteed contract in NFL history and then no player after him got one?
Watson is expected to get a 5-year, $230 million contract that is fully guaranteed.
Remember that?
Third most lucrative contract in NFL history in terms of guaranteed money, behind only Browns quarterback Deshaun Watson's $230 million.
Players who were better and didn't have dozens and dozens of sexual misconduct allegations against them, well, that's because of collusion. Double collusion, actually. Thanks to Pablo Torre and Mike Florio, we have learned that the NFL not only colluded to prevent players from getting fully guaranteed contracts, but after an arbitrator ruled they colluded, the NFL and NFLPA colluded in an attempt to keep us from finding out that their dirty little money secrets were dirty. Double collusion. Double coup! Assuming you can get past Mike Florio tooting his own horn more loudly than the horn of plenty at Vikings games.
One of my major objectives in everything I do in this space is to find out the things they don't want us to know.
Then you should check out the full interview between Pablo and Florio on Pablo's YouTube channel as they break down this scandal that the NFL clearly wanted swept under the turf. And yes, I said turf, not grass field. I'm going to break down the important talking points from that interview and reveal how the NFL was investigated, found mostly liable, and suffered absolutely zero consequences for their efforts to make sure players do not get fully guaranteed deals. It all stems from a 60-page document Pablo Torre unearthed, and one that Mike Florio read twice.
Mike, you've read this thing? Yes, we can clarify that
Twice.
too.
Twice.
He read it twice. Well, I watched their entire discussion on double speed once, so.
This is something I can tell you, Pablo, with a high degree of certainty. They do not want us to know, and I applaud you.
Subscribe here and pledge your undying loyalty to me, Brandon Perna! La Nora Spots. You can also support this channel via Patreon or the YouTube memberships. I don't know, if I get 10,000 patrons, maybe I go ad-free. Maybe I go ad-free. This scandal is both a big deal and kind of a nothing burger in the same breath, and I'll explain. NFL players essentially filed a collusion grievance against the NFL following the time period where Deshaun Watson got $230 million guaranteed, and then Russell Wilson, Lamar Jackson, and Kyler Murray did not. In fact, Kyler Murray signed a near identical contract to Deshaun Watson with one glaring difference:
a lot less guaranteed money.
To Watson's $230. 1 year later, despite having $30 million more in total contract value than Watson at $260, Lamar Jackson was given just $185 million in total guarantees. And thank God Lamar never went to a day spa with Justin Tucker, because he could have lost roughly $150 million, since that amount of money was not guaranteed in his contract.
It's a grown man thing at the end of the day, so you got to be a grown man if you're going to handle business.
Also mentioned in the arbitration is Russell Wilson, who was given a $242 million extension by the Broncos in September of 2022, and unironically, he's being used as an example of that somehow being less than what he should have received in terms of guarantees. I'll get to the Russ part in a little bit, as it's an important piece in this mess. One I am torn by, considering the fact that the only reason the Broncos were able to move on from Russ was because of the lack of guarantees in the deal. It should be noted, new Broncos owner at the time, Greg Pinner, did not want to give Russ a contract extension at all. Greg knew.
If it is to be said, so it is.
Do players deserve fully guaranteed contracts? Yes, especially in the NFL. Do you as a football fan actually want that? No, because if your team gives it to the wrong motherfucker, you could find yourself drafting Dylan Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders in the middle of a draft in a few years. The grievance that was filed suggested that the NFL Management Council, never heard of them, with the blessing of Roger Goodell, actively encouraged all 32 teams to reduce contract guarantees at the March 2022 owners meetings, which of course took place shortly after that disgusting Watson Watson contract. Now, the NFL Management Council is a nonprofit association that represents its members in negotiations that are supposed to adhere to the rules set forth by the collective bargaining agreement. Essentially, its job is to make sure contracts follow the agreed upon rules, I guess. And by agreed upon rules, I mean the ones Roger Goodell once followed. The Management Council, from what I can tell, operates in the shadows for nefarious purposes like the Illuminati. It's where Aaron Rodgers discovered that lizard people are real, okay?
That is one of the consequences of operating in shadow. You invite people to ask the fair question, why are you operating in shadow? The unmistakable vibe that I have picked up over the years is what the Management Council says goes.
The Management Council, I guess, did its job since the NFLPA failed miserably to ensure players get fully guaranteed contracts during the last collective bargaining agreement negotiations. If you want to be unsympathetic to the players' cause, point to that CBA deal. It's hard to care that their $100+ million deals aren't fully guaranteed when they agreed to play for non-guaranteed deals, right? Well, when Watson was given his contract, the consensus thought at the time was, even though he is the absolute worst player to give this to, all future blockbuster quarterback contracts will have to be fully guaranteed, right? No sane person on earth can argue Watson deserves more guaranteed money than Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen or Joe Burrow or Lamar Jackson. I can think of so many examples. We thought that would happen, and thus trickle down to the other positions. If corporations have taught us anything, it's that trickle-down economics work. Hell, even Ravens owner Steve Biscotti said the same damn thing. Quote, "It's like, damn, I wish they hadn't guaranteed the whole contract. I don't know that he should have been the first guy to get a fully guaranteed contract." No shit, Steve. But then he said, "To me, that's something that is groundbreaking. And it'll make negotiations harder with others. But it doesn't necessarily mean that we have to play that game, you know? We shall see." Oh, and we did see. They did not play that game.
If we can get this done, Broncos general manager George Paton feels very good about it for us as a franchise and the benchmark it sets versus Watson for the rest of the league. End quote.
The NFL owners actively worked to ensure less money was guaranteed moving forward, that the Watson contract was basically a one-off done by the silly, dumb, stupid, brain-dead Browns. And I swear, that's exactly what they said in the litigation.
Mike, you've read this thing? Yes, we can clarify that
Twice.
too.
Twice.
If you don't believe me, read the 60 pages yourself, okay? In the ruling, this is what the arbitrator, Chris Droney, wrote. "There is little question that the NFL Management Council, with the blessing of the commissioner, encouraged the 32 NFL clubs to reduce guarantees and veterans' contracts at the March 2022 annual owners meeting." There's your smoking gun. Here's the crazy part. Despite that conclusion, the NFL actually won the grievance. Droney could not prove by a clear preponderance that NFL teams acted on that advice. He's saying Goodell and the owners definitely worked together to make sure no more fully guaranteed contracts were handed out. And why do we know that's true? Well, because one, no more fully guaranteed contracts were handed out, and two, there's proof in some of the communications that I will reveal here in a moment. But the arbitrator basically said there's nothing they can do about it via the nanny boo-boo clause. We know this happened, right? It's like if I ate McDonald's every day for 2 months, gained 40 pounds, and then said, I can't prove it's the McDonald's that turned me into a luscious pog. It could be hereditary. That's not shocking. We all knew the Lamar contract situation when it was happening was fucked up, that there was something weird about it, right? Maybe if Kyler Murray wasn't a little person, we would have been enraged by how shitty his contract was and guarantees retrospectively. The three quarterbacks were the focal point in this grievance. Ultimately, though, it represented 594 players, roughly a third of the league. The arbitration ruled in the league's favor, which means the NFL told 1/3 of their players they do not deserve guaranteed contracts.
You take 594 players, and if there's ultimately a finding of collusion, the damages would have been in the
$100 billion.
And honestly, Deshaun Watson makes them look correct based on the Browns' regret factor in that situation, and to lesser extent, so does Kyler Murray and Russell Wilson's deals. I think this plays out a bit differently if those contracts were given to any of the top 10 NFL QBs. If the players, though, are smart, they will use this as the concession the NFL has to abide by when they eventually add that 18th game.
The reason the NFL didn't want these findings public,
If we see something that's a violation, we will certainly make that public.
even though they won, is this gives players a bit of leverage in the next round of negotiation. When you see the Broncos celebrating the non-guarantees, when you see the Chargers and the Cardinals celebrating the non-guarantees, and it affecting Herbert's deal, Murray's deal, etc., this next round of negotiations for quarterbacks could be the round where Lamar, Herbert, Mahomes, Allen takes their team to the mattresses.
None of this would be a story if not for Watson and the Browns' desperation. His contract was an anomaly.
Fully guaranteed every single penny. That had never been done before.
The NFL made a significant effort to pay players the way they always had. There is one big concern that does remain, though. Here are the major bullet points. Roger Goodell and the Management Council immediately started working to present info to the 32 owners to make sure no more fully guaranteed contracts happened under the current CBA.
If guarantees continue to grow in both amount and number of players, then there's a risk that they become the norm in contracts, regardless of player quality. That not only has the potential to hinder roster management, but set a market standard that will be difficult to walk back. Of course, all clubs must make their own decisions, but continuing these trends can handcuff a club in the future. And Kraft testified, quote, he did not recall talking about the growth of signing bonuses and guarantees at the owners' meeting. Falcons owner Arthur Blank testified that he did hear it, but that, quote, hearing the presentation did not cause him to reduce guarantees for his team.
Remember that when they add the 18th game under the current CBA. Remember that. Florio points out that the creation of the Management Council itself functions as an entity to allow the NFL owners to collude while maintaining the notion that they function independently of each other.
Every team has the ability to make any decision it wants.
Which I think is the first time I have ever thought about the 32 owners working independently of each other. I've been covering the NFL for over a decade on YouTube now, and I have never once thought about the 32 owners as independent business owners. To me, they are a tsunami who move together in unison as an unstoppable force to get what they want. The quote from the report states,
it unmistakably encouraged the owners to reduce the trend of increasing player guarantees.
Cardinals owner Michael Bidwell told Chargers owner Dean Spanos how he kept Kyler's guarantees low.
We are going to load up this contract with so many incentives to earn the real money, end quote. These QB deals are expensive, but we limited the fully guaranteed money and have some pretty good language. Thankfully, we have a QB that's worth paying.
Your deal helps us for our quarterback next year.
Again, the issue is Kyler Murray and Russell Wilson are also not ideal candidates to validate fully guaranteed deals. Kyler's play didn't really justify a fully guaranteed contract leading up to it, and then I think he tore his ACL while actually signing his contract. But who got paid after the Cardinals fired him? Oh yeah, Coach Cliff Kingsbury. Coaches don't count towards the cap, so teams don't fear paying them to not coach. And where does Russell Wilson factor in? Well, I said Kyler and Russ aren't the right guys to forge the path ahead with fully guaranteed contracts. Well, J.C. Tretter, former president of the NFLPA, agrees with me and was trashing Russ behind the scenes. That's not the fucking guy you want fighting for all of your players. Publicly, Tretter was expressing frustration with Wilson's contract not being guaranteed, and privately, he was talking shit to everyone. How do we know that? Tretter's own text messages were used by the NFL owners to make their case that they were not concluding.
J.C. Tretter also called Russell Wilson a quote-unquote wuss. And then he said of Wilson, quote, instead of being the guy that made guaranteed contracts the norm, he's the guy that ruined it for everyone.
I hate that I am thrilled that the Broncos did not give Russ the 7-year, $350 million fully guaranteed he wanted. my team would still be in salary cap hell, and there would be no end in sight. Kyler Murray's contract, Russell Wilson's contract, even if they represent missed opportunities for future fully guaranteed deals, aren't the hill I die on. The thing that actually bothers me is how this affected Lamar Jackson's negotiations. Let's give the Ravens this though, Lamar might not be the easiest player to negotiate with, both on a logistical level, based on this report, if he wasn't willing to answer their calls because of an alleged malfunctioning phone speaker, and because Lamar does not have an agent. What's hard to swallow, though, is that Lamar was a league MVP and still had trouble getting a deal done in 2022. And that once the Ravens tagged him, not a single team showed interest in trying to sign him / trade for him.
What should the Ravens do about Lamar?
Trade him.
Once Lamar signed the non-exclusive tag from the Ravens, he could negotiate with other teams directly, and not a single team reached out to him. So you're telling me nobody wanted to at least call one of the best quarterbacks on earth? NFL teams call for anybody. They'll call on guys like Deontay Johnson. Again, an agent might have been the difference there for Lamar. So even using him as an example gets a little bit odd. But go back to the Ravens owner who said, "But it doesn't necessarily mean that we have to play that game." Lamar eventually got paid. They didn't play that game, but he's played even better and will get an even bigger deal very soon. But it should not be forgotten that Lamar was not able to actually get his max guaranteed value, and it's most likely because the NFL owners agreed to make sure that didn't happen. Yahoo Sports wrote this in their article: "Despite Droney's ruling, both the NFL and NFLPA reportedly fought to keep their findings secret. And per Mike Florio, the NFL has obvious reasons for desiring that outcome. It's less clear why the NFLPA would fight to keep the ruling a secret." Oh, I know why. It's because they failed to do their job. The NFL always embarrasses the NFLPA. They have no power, and their entire organization might be compromised. The real interesting development was how the NFLPA found their new executive director, Lloyd Howell, the guy who succeeded Demarius Smith. NFLPA president, J.C. Tretter, led an application process that was very narrow and secretive, which actually violated the NFLPA constitution, one that ensured the selection committee could actually look into the candidates for the executive director job. Tretter added an amendment that basically said NFLPA representatives couldn't do any research or vetting into the candidates before it was time to vote. Basically, they were trying to push a hand-picked candidate into that role without an open and fair selection process. Holy fuck, they pushed lizard person Lloyd Howell into that role, a guy who was deeply involved in procurement fraud, a procurement fraud scandal at a company called Booz Allen, one that ultimately cost taxpayers a ton of money. None of that came to light though because there was not a proper vetting process. In return for pushing him through, Howell created a position for J.C. Tretter within the NFLPA called Chief Strategy Officer, and it's believed that Tretter could essentially install a bridge executive director who could hold down the job until he himself could take over the position. Jesus Christ. Ultimately, Tretter wanted to keep the evidence of the league collusion in the dark because it too would have incriminated him in some degree as someone who trashed the very same players he was selected to represent. Ask yourself, do you want to support players individually in a way that allows them to maximize the benefits of playing in the NFL? Or do you want to support the shrewd business of the NFL, which allows your team the best chance to succeed? The reason teams can turn themselves around so quickly is because of the ability to ditch a bad contract. Fully guaranteed contracts might be the best thing for players, but at this juncture, they are not the best way for your team to maximize its success. Could the NFL figure out how to navigate that? Yes, but we're not there yet. As a fan of a team with extremely deep pockets, I would support an amnesty clause similar to the one the NBA used to have that allowed teams to release one player while paying them over a set period of time and not have that money count against the cap. If that existed, Russell Wilson would have been amnestied and paid out his full deal, and the Broncos would never gone into cap hell. And it really wouldn't have hurt them because they have so much money to throw around. At the same time, that option would give a major advantage to teams like the Denver Broncos, who have very rich ownership, and would not help teams who are a little more cash poor, or perhaps just stingy, like maybe the Bengals. It's a great way to incentivize fully guaranteed contracts without as much risk to the team, but it does tilt the league in favor of rich ownership, and that of course has its own problems as well. But then again, this is the fucking NFL, and the owners should have massive wallets. Thanks for watching That's Good Sports. Please subscribe here on YouTube. You gotta subscribe or I disappear. You gotta subscribe or I have no purpose to do anything.